Level 1, the observer. You are 22 years old the first time someone asks if you would die for your country. Not in a classroom, not in a recruiter's office with a flag on the wall and a poster about benefits. In a gray room with no windows, a single fluorescent light overhead, and a man across the table who has been watching you for 45 minutes without writing a single thing down. He has your entire life in a folder in front of him. Your grades, your finances, your relationships, the argument you had with your roommate sophomore year, the professor you emailed at 2 a.m. about a paper on Soviet foreign policy. He knows things about you that you have never said out loud. He closes the folder. He asks the question. You don't answer immediately. That is the right instinct, and somewhere in the back of your mind, you know he is measuring your pause as much as your answer. You tell him the truth, not the patriotic version, not the version designed to impress. The honest, complicated, slightly frightening version. He nods once, stands up, tells you someone will be in touch. 3 weeks later, an offer letter arrives from a consulting firm you have never heard of. You understand immediately. You accept within the hour. Langley is not what you imagined. You expected something cinematic, something cold and angular and humming with secret energy. What you get is an office complex that smells like recycled air and burnt coffee, with ID badge checkpoints every 100 feet, and a cafeteria that serves surprisingly mediocre food for the world's most powerful intelligence agency. Your badge is a different color from everyone else's. It tells the whole building what you are before you open your mouth. You are an intern, you observe, you learn, you do not ask questions that haven't been invited. Your first assignment is research support for an analyst team, tracking economic indicators in 3 Central Asian countries. The work is dense, detailed, and almost aggressively unglamorous. You spend 8 hours a day reading reports, cross-referencing data, flagging inconsistencies, and writing summaries. That will be read by someone 2 levels above you, who will condense them further for someone 2 levels above them. You are the bottom of a very long chain. You are so far from the actual intelligence product that some days it feels like you are working for a particularly secretive think tank. But you pay attention to everything. You watch how the analysts move, how they talk to each other, and how they talk to their supervisors. You notice who gets pulled into rooms and who doesn't. You notice which reports generate urgency and which ones get filed without comment. You are building a map, not of the world but of this place. Its rhythms, its hierarchies, its unspoken rules. There are things they don't teach you in training that you learn in the first 30 days simply by watching. Never volunteer information beyond what is asked. Always know who is in the room before you speak. The person who talks the most knows the least. The person who says almost nothing and asks one precise question at the end of the meeting is the one everyone respects. You take notes, not on paper, in your head. At the end of your internship, your supervisor calls you in and tells you that your analytical work was above standard and that you have been recommended for the Career Analyst program. She says it the way someone announces a weather forecast, matter of fact, no celebration, no warmth. You thank her professionally. You walk out of her office, and you allow yourself exactly 4 seconds of quiet satisfaction. Then you get back to work. Level 2, the student. The Career Analyst program is 18 months of the most rigorous intellectual training you have ever experienced. You study geopolitics, economics, psychology, foreign languages, and the specific, almost surgical discipline of intelligence analysis. The art of taking incomplete, often contradictory information and constructing the most accurate possible picture of reality. You learn to identify your own cognitive biases and account for them. You learn to write with a precision that makes every word earn its place. You learn that certainty is almost always a trap, and that the most honest thing an analyst can write is a carefully calibrated statement of probability. You are assigned a regional desk. You will not say which one. You spend the next 2 years becoming a genuine expert, not in the academic sense, but in the operational sense. You know the political landscape of your assigned region the way a doctor knows an anatomy. You know the key figures, their relationships, their vulnerabilities, their histories. You know which information sources are reliable and which ones are compromised. You know when the pattern changes before most people know there was a pattern. Your first significant contribution comes 18 months in. You flag an anomaly in financial transfer data, a pattern too subtle for automated systems to catch, too consistent to be coincidence. You write a 3-page assessment. Your supervisor reviews it, asks you 6 hard questions, and when you answer all 6 without flinching, sends it up the chain. 2 weeks later, you are told without detail that your assessment was actionable, that it was used. You will never know exactly how. That is the nature of this work. You pour yourself into analysis that disappears into a system larger than you can see. And you have to find satisfaction in the contribution itself rather than the outcome. Most people can't do that. The ones who can become very good analysts. You become a very good analyst. Level 3, the expert. At 28, you are promoted to senior analyst. The title change is modest. The responsibility change is not. You now produce finished intelligence, reports that go directly into briefing packages for senior officials. In rare cases, into the president's daily brief. The first time you see your analysis reflected in a document that you know has been read in the Oval Office, you sit very still for a moment and think about the 22-year-old in the gray room with no windows. The distance between that moment and this one is enormous. The distance between this moment and where this place can take you is still larger. Senior analysts run their own accounts. You manage a portfolio of intelligence requirements. Coordinate with collection assets you are not allowed to identify by name. And produce assessments that carry your name and your judgment. When you are wrong, it is documented. When you are right, it is noted. The record accumulates over years into a reputation. Your reputation is the only real currency in this building. You work with officers now, the people who operate in the field. The relationship between analysts and officers is its own complex ecosystem, mutual dependence layered with mutual skepticism. Officers think analysts are too comfortable, too theoretical, too far from the reality of what it costs to collect the information they so casually assess. Analysts think officers are too close to their sources, too emotionally invested, too prone to advocacy over objectivity. Both are sometimes right. You learn to work across that divide. You are sent overseas for the first time, not as an operator, as a senior analytical advisor attached to a station for 90 days. It is the first time you see the work from the other side. The first time you understand, in your body rather than just your mind, what it means to collect intelligence in a hostile environment. You return to Langley with a different understanding of the reports you have been reading for years. Everything you write afterward is better for it. Level 4, the operator. The transition to operational leadership is not a straight line. It requires additional training that you will not describe. It requires a psychological evaluation that is the most invasive thing you have ever experienced. It requires a conversation with a senior official who tells you, plainly, that the work you are about to do operates in a space where the rules are different. And the consequences of error are not professional, they are human. You are appointed station chief of a mid-tier overseas posting. A CIA station is a self-contained intelligence operation embedded inside a U.S. embassy. To the outside world, you are a diplomat with a vague portfolio. To the small number of people who know what the station actually is, you are the senior American intelligence officer in the country. You run assets. You manage relationships with host nation intelligence services. You identify targets, develop sources, and produce intelligence that feeds directly into national security decision-making. Your days begin before the sun rises and end when the work is done, which means they rarely end before midnight. You are responsible for the safety of every officer and asset under your authority. That responsibility is not abstract. It lives in your chest every hour of every day. You carry the names of your assets the way other people carry photographs of their families. Because losing an asset is not a professional failure, it is a human catastrophe. It is a person who trusted you and your country, paying a price that cannot be reimbursed. You make decisions in this posting that you will carry for the rest of your life. Some of them you are proud of. Some of them you understand were necessary. Some of them you review at 3 in the morning in hotel rooms in countries whose names you cannot mention. And you sit with the weight of them. And then you get up and you go back to work. Because the alternative is to stop, and you discovered a long time ago that you cannot stop. The station produces 3 significant intelligence coups during your tenure. A source development that takes 22 months of careful cultivation and yields information of strategic importance. A counterintelligence operation that identifies a foreign penetration of a partner agency before it causes catastrophic damage. A disruption operation that you will not describe. You are recalled to Langley. You are given a directorate. Level 5, the architect. A CIA deputy director manages an entire directorate, analysis, operations, science and technology, or support. Each one a vast organism with thousands of moving parts. And a budget that does not appear in any public document. You are 44 years old. You have been doing this for over 2 decades. You have worked in 4 countries under official cover. You have sat across from foreign intelligence chiefs and negotiated arrangements that do not exist on paper. You have briefed secretaries of state and national security advisors. You have been in rooms where decisions were made that shaped events the public would read about years later, without ever knowing the full architecture behind them. At this level, you do not collect intelligence. You do not analyze intelligence. You build and maintain the systems through which intelligence flows. You manage people who do the actual work. Your job is strategy, resources, relationships, and accountability. You are the person responsible when something goes wrong, and something always, eventually, goes wrong. The oversight at this level is intense and multi-layered. Congressional committees, Inspector General reviews, legal counsel on every significant operation. The romanticized image of an intelligence agency operating in the shadows with unlimited authority and no accountability is a fiction. Everything requires documentation. Everything requires legal review. The paperwork alone could bury you. You develop a relationship with ambiguity that most people never have to confront. You make decisions based on incomplete information with consequences you cannot fully predict, under time pressure, with significant resources and human lives at stake. And then you move to the next decision. There is no space to process. There is no one to debrief with. The people who would understand are all doing the same thing in parallel offices down the same corridor. You develop a very specific kind of loneliness. It is the loneliness of consequence, of knowing things that cannot be shared, of carrying a version of the world that is fundamentally different from the one most people inhabit, more complicated, more dangerous, less resolved. You have not watched a news broadcast in 15 years without seeing the gaps, without knowing what the anchor doesn't know, without understanding that the clean narrative being presented to the public is a simplified version of a reality. That is almost always messier, stranger, and more morally complex than anyone is comfortable acknowledging. Your family knows you work for the government. They have learned not to ask more than that. Level 6, the weight. The director of the Central Intelligence Agency is a presidential appointment confirmed by the Senate. When the call comes, you have been expecting it for years and are still not ready for it. The confirmation process is its own form of exposure. Your record, the parts of it that can be declassified, is examined by people whose job is to find problems. You sit before committees and answer questions with the precision of someone who has spent a career choosing words carefully, which means you answer everything that was actually asked and nothing that wasn't. You are confirmed. The 7th floor of CIA headquarters is quieter than you expected. You are now responsible for the entire intelligence apparatus. 17,000 employees across multiple directorates and dozens of overseas stations. A classified budget in the tens of billions. Relationships with the intelligence services of dozens of allied nations. Reporting directly to the President of the United States. Your first morning as director, you receive the full intelligence picture, not the version briefed to senior officials, not the finished product, the raw architecture. The sources, the methods, the gaps, the threats, the operations currently running in real time across every continent. It takes 4 hours. At the end of it, you sit alone in the director's office, and you are, for a moment, completely still. The weight is not what you expected. It is heavier in some places and lighter in others. The decisions you feared most, the ones involving the greatest moral complexity, turn out to be the ones your institution has the most rigorous frameworks for. The decisions that actually keep you awake are smaller and more human. A station chief in a deteriorating situation who needs resources you are not sure you can provide. An asset who is compromised and whose extraction is not straightforward. A congressional oversight chair who is asking questions that are legitimate and whose answers would damage operations that are still running. You manage up and down simultaneously. To the president, you are the intelligence advisor, the person responsible for ensuring that the most powerful individual on Earth has the most accurate possible picture of global reality. To your workforce, you are the institutional leader, the person responsible for their safety, their resources, their authority to do their jobs. You brief the president 3 times a week, sometimes more. You sit in the situation room during crises, and you answer questions with the same calibrated precision you developed as a junior analyst in a fluorescent-lit room decades ago. The discipline is the same, only the stakes have changed. There is a morning, 8 months into your tenure, when an operation goes wrong in a way that costs lives. Not enemy lives, your people. You are informed at 4 a.m. by a duty officer whose voice is controlled and professional. You listen to the full report. You ask the questions that need to be asked. You authorize the necessary responses. You hang up. You sit in the dark for 11 minutes. Then you make the next call. That is the job. That has always been the job. From the first errand run, with a research summary to this office with its secure lines and its impossible wait, the job has always been the same at its core. You gather the best possible understanding of a dangerous and complicated world. You act on that understanding with whatever resources you have. You accept the consequences. You continue. Somewhere in a gray room with no windows, a 22-year-old is being asked a question. The entire architecture of what you have built, every station, every asset, every operation currently running across 43 countries, rests, in part, on how that person answers. You hope they tell the truth. You hope they understand what they are walking into. You know that even if they do, they don't. Not really, not yet. The only way to understand what this place costs is to climb it, rank by rank, year by year, decision by decision, until you are sitting where you are sitting now, at the top of the most powerful intelligence organization in human history, in a quiet office at 4 a.m., carrying a world that no one else can see. The phone rings again. You answer it before the second ring. You always do.